Hello, welcome back to the Stickman Sessions podcast. It has been a fair while, I'm really sorry about that, but we do have 4 or 5 excellent episodes lined up for the next couple of weeks and a few more booked in to be recorded after that, so hopefully we'll be a little bit more consistent with it from now on. We've had some amazing guests recently, various people from the industry, musicians, promoters, writers, all of whom have had some really insightful things to say about various aspects of the industry and their experiences in sort of gigging and songwriting and promoting. So if you're an independent artist or a band, hopefully there's plenty that you'll find useful, plenty of good advice and ideas that you can utilise. And if you're just a music fan and you just want to enjoy the conversation, there's some fantastic points made by everyone, and hopefully you'll just find their perspectives interesting. This week's guest is the wonderful Chad Earnest. He's a writer for Stereo Stickman, so he writes music reviews for us. He writes articles on various aspects of the industry, think pieces, research pieces. He's a wonderful writer, but he is a videographer by trade, so he's worked a lot with album design and video design, that kind of thing. I mean, I'll let you get into the conversation to find out more about what he does, but it was great to be able to chat with him and have such an in-depth conversation about creativity and everything surrounding that. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you so much for checking back in with us, and yeah, let's get into it. Alright, so just to give a little bit of background, how would you describe what you currently do at the moment, either as a freelancer or however you're involved in what you do?
I don't know, I try to give everything an equal shot, writing-wise, when I find something I like. I don't know, I like to look at things from a different perspective. I feel like some people, you point to a turd on the ground and someone tries to explain how it smells and how it looks, but you can also alternatively take the approach of, what sort of amazing meal that animal must have had and the forces acting on its life to cause,
gosh,
that sort of thing to happen.
Yeah. Wowzers.
And,
that's a great, yeah, go on, sorry.
No, that's all right. That's just, some people look at things for what they are, and some people look at things for what they could be, and I try to be one of the people that looks at things for what they could be.
Do you find that quite easy, or is that something that takes time to master?
Sometimes it's a challenge. There are some people that just seem to have super generic copy of a copy of a copy of thoughts, and you try to find out their motivation. You realize conformity plays a huge issue in it, but
yeah,
I think everyone deep down has something they want to say, and I think that as a person, your job in life is best served as helping anyone else say what they want to say, because when you have an open forum, that's kind of the best situation for everybody.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's great. I love the turd analogy. That's such a great start. So at the minute, what do you describe yourself as, like a videographer or?
Videographer, photographer, whatever the moment calls for.
Anything artistic, I guess.
Yeah, basically anything where I can sit down and look at it.
Yeah.
I'm not actually as good with the sound personally.
Okay.
But the visuals speak to me a lot more than music does a lot of times.
Okay, cool. So did you study at college or anything like that, or did you just kind of?
I went to Full Sail University down here, which they're known for. They're probably like the Grammy winningest school we have in America, but they also have a lot of all the technical sides of things. They're not like an acting college or a performance college, but if you're the guy working the soundboard or you're the guy working the computer or the video editing, that's the school you want to go to, because you won't get your name in big flashing lights anywhere, but you'll get to work in the industry for the rest of your life, so that's kind of cool.
Okay, awesome. So when did writing begin for you then, like your article writing or review writing? Freshman year of high school. I was like 11 or 12 years old. I kind of always enjoyed writing. At the point we used to have like Young Authors Day in school and stuff. Yeah.
But I had this 6 months where I was sort of hospitalized. They'd fed me a whole bunch of like really hardcore drugs, a bunch of narcotics and everything, and I don't want to be the guy that's like, drugs expand your mind, but I was on a lot of drugs, and just I couldn't talk to anybody. I was locked in a room, and writing was kind of the only place I could turn to sort of express myself. at the time.
Yeah.
So I wrote my first book then.
Oh my God.
And then from there, just sort of, once you write the first like 300 or 400 pages, writing things, it doesn't become about trying to write something that's long. It's about writing something that's better.
Yeah.
And it makes it a lot easier to kind of hone down and polish that.
Yeah, for sure. So what was your first book then? What was it about?
It was this little piece of crap called Project Alchemy. I fancied myself one of those sci-fi fantasy writers, just about like an old government agent that happens to find this island in the middle of nowhere on a research trip where they actually do have the Philosopher's Stone that everybody's spent so many years looking for. But it turns out that, it had kind of fallen into the hands of some of the worst parts of society there, and he kind of takes it upon himself to maybe not so much utilize it like he was supposed to go there for, but to lock it away from everybody forever because you can't have that kind of power.
That sounds great.
Yeah, well, it wasn't, but thank you. It was every 12-year-old's,
It was a pretty good place.
It's what you write when you're 12.
No, it's a good place to start. So if you wrote this when you were on a lot of drugs, did you remember it after when you came out of this haze, or, was it?
Yeah. Yeah, I read it a couple times, and that's kind of when I realized I don't really want to do this. It was, I wrote the first chapter. I still, to this day, I really like the first chapter. But then everything else, I did this weird thing where, like, I wrote the first chapter, and it was in, like, a third-person past tense almost sort of thing. But then I tried to bring the character himself into the forefront in the second and every chapter moving on. And I started writing in this almost first-person present perspective.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really work for books. But I found out it works really well for film, and that's when I started doing film writing was, somebody, one of my teachers at school read it and was like, hey, I have some friends in film, and you need to learn how to write that format instead.
You mean like script writing?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So where does music come into it? So you obviously you're a big music fan, but you've never, you're not a musician yourself, no?
No, I played a little bit in high school. I just, it's hard for me. I have this weird, my brain fixates on things, and music for me has always been sort of magic. When I learned film, I really kind of hated myself because now every time I watch a movie, I can't but sit there and dissect every single thing that's happening. Every piece of dialogue, I'm like, oh, I bet that's going to come into play later, and it kind of ruins the movie for me.
I know exactly
but
what
music,
yeah. You didn't want to do that to music.
Right, I didn't. I wanted to keep the magic, and every time I tried picking up music, I would get stuck. It would almost like I would take like a country song or a pop song, and it would still just turn into this endless loop of a techno song because in my head I couldn't stop the loop. I couldn't move from verse to chorus to verse to bridge to, my mind wouldn't make the transition. It would just these are the notes that you're playing. Keep playing them, and it just sort of droned on. So I took a step back, and I do some lyrical writing with some friends of mine because I can still, poetry flows to me just perfectly, but music itself it's just a mystery.
Is that Big Phillie that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So who are they?
Yeah,
are they a local band or just like some friends of yours you've known for a while?
Yeah, he's one guy. He's worked with a few different local bands. And I've done some work with some of them. I can't even remember. They go through so many names, and that's the problem that I've had with a lot of the people that I've worked with. They do really well as one band, and then they change one person in the band, and instead of just keeping their name for that brand recognition, they just change the whole name of the band because they're like, oh, without our guitarist, we can't still be Great Lakes Riot. We have to be something else.
Yeah.
And then, they play their same old songs, but they play them under the new band, and then clubs won't hire them, and then they just go back to working in a factory. It's kind of depressing.
Oh, God. I tried, when you mentioned them, I tried to Google them, but when you Google Big Phillie, you get just a lot of stuff about Philadelphia coming up. Well, from him.
Yeah. No, he's a real private. And that could have been, I could have done a little bit more marketing on his behalf. But by the time I released the albums, he'd had 2 kids and he was working full time. And he was like, "Listen, man, I don't know if I really want to do this. Like, you can put this stuff out there, so it'll be out there, but I'm not really going to pursue this." So I didn't.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you find it akin to writing poetry then when you write lyrics, or is it a slightly different process?
It is different. Every once in a while, I have like the book that I have that has a bunch of different poetry in it, and Jason, who is Big Phillie, his name's Jason Phillips. Jason will take it and he'll find something that he likes and he'll kind of retweak it to fit a song. But it's only because, my cadence poetry-wise is sort of, it's a self-contained, like, one poem. And when you do the lyrics for the songs, it has to be something that flows not only with the lyrical content of everything else in the song, but it flows into the verses, the bridges, the choruses.
Yeah, for sure.
So it can't always be a closed end. You can't end on, you can't write iambic pentameter and have the last two be the same, the only two that rhyme. You have to keep it open to...
Yeah, I guess, fair enough.
To fit the rest of everything.
Oh, cool. Okay, so in the way of video stuff, I know you did the intro, the little animated intro to one band's video that I watched today. I can't remember the name. It was a rock band.
Oh, yeah, Bonehawk.
Yeah, that was
they
it.
Yeah, they had hired Three Goats, which was a local production company, and they're really good at what they do. And they didn't do a lot of the animation stuff like that. They didn't have somebody that could really think as outside of the box. I don't want to say I think outside of the box, because normally when somebody hands me a job, I Google what the source material is and any tutorials I can find on how to do it.
Stay very much in the box.
Right, it's very much in the box. It's just, but that's what they wanted. We had there's a local like PBS station around here that was like WSBT 13 or whatever that had that exact same logo, and they wanted it they wanted basically an exact, because that's what they grew up on. They wanted to be an homage to that sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
So I Googled that video clip, and then they had the whole the laser cutting looking thing to it. Did my research, found a place they could do something sort of similar, and was able to just tweak just different effects and After Effects to make it, because it spells out Bonehawk, but in order to do Bonehawk and in order to have the lasers run the way that the lasers have to run in there to make that form, we actually had to take a PNG of their Bonehawk logo, cut it in half diagonally, and then run a tracer through After Effects to where it starts at one end of one symbol and the other end of the other symbol and traces the whole thing through. So it looks like it's tracing out a whole word, but in reality it's tracing out two separate images that were cut and placed there for our use to look like that.
That sounds far more complex than the people envision, I imagine.
Yeah, that's my specialty, is sort of in the box, sort of outside the box, just seeing what we can take to make work. And that's the thing I like about film, though, is I realized very early on that the difference between what is and what people see is the exact same thing when it comes to film. There's no, if you can make it happen, if it looks like you're on a 40-foot yacht with 30 other people, cool. But it could just be like a skimmer with 6 people and you're good at filming.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's, yeah. Yeah, I never really thought of it that way. That's really cool. Have you actually been on the camera side of things, or are you just kind of always behind the scenes, so to speak, like doing...
like as far as acting and stuff goes?
No, I meant like doing the like, have you ever filmed? I don't know,
anything. Anything that's on my website is something that I've filmed.
You personally, right? Okay.
Yeah, that I personally filmed. I do all the raw footage, and then I go through and I edit it and all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I do a lot of the film, a lot of the editing. A lot of the stuff here is, if you're one guy, you got to kind of do it. If you're willing to do it.
No, that's awesome.
Rarely a crew.
So when did reviewing music become an interest to you? And were you not worried that would do the same thing as learning music, in that it would make you hear it differently and you wouldn't appreciate it as much?
Well, you'd posted an ad looking for people.
Yeah.
And I'm always looking for something new to write. I thought of it as a new challenge at the time, because I feel like you go through stages as a writer where it's like, first you're just writing to write, then you're writing to see if you can hit these goals, then you're writing to see if you can hit these creative goals, and then you're writing to see if you can reach your goals. And I think the last step to that is writing to reach someone else's goals. That's the true, for at least from an almost commercial or a hireable stance.
Yeah.
I did the same thing in film. When you first start doing movies, you do home movies of your kids. And like, if you really like the craft itself, then you move on to being able to do everything. But a lot of artists, they just want to focus on their own thing, but that's kind of not how our industry works. You have to be able to write or film what somebody else wants from you first to prove that you can film anything. And then once you've proven that you can film anything, then people will start giving you money to write and direct the things that you want to write and direct.
Yeah, that's right.
And I just, I sort of saw music as an opportunity to, because I think everything, that's one of the things I like about your site. Everything has its own merit to some extent, and I hate when people review something and they give it an absolutely terrible review without taking into context who the person's from, where they're,
yeah, it's just
what their values are as a person.
Yeah, because I don't think anyone reads a review and uses that to decide whether they like a piece of music. You're going to listen to it anyway, so that's not
right.
The purpose of the review.
Right.
Yeah. No, completely agree with that. So have you found that it's changed the way that you listen, or is that just when you're working on an article you listen to it that way and otherwise you'll just enjoy the music?
It's both. I definitely, I'll find myself, somebody will have a playlist on at work and it'll be a song I haven't heard before, and I'll start listening to it. I'll be like, oh, this is a very interesting take. I wonder if this person's from Tennessee, or if they're just, if they just like to drink Tennessee whiskey. I wonder why they've mentioned that by name. I wonder, it's
mildly analysing it. Yeah, no,
yeah, just a little bit.
Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about rock then. So would you say that that's your genre? You're a rock fan, or do you?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay,
cool. Yeah.
And
some areas shamefully, some areas proudly.
Which areas shamefully?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like it's been long enough since pop punk and emo died, and I still have like that Bowling for Soup playlist on my phone that I go to every day. And it's like I'm a grown man and I'm listening to teenage music, and people call me out on it all the time. But who cares? It's the new dad rock.
Yeah, for sure. And non-shamelessly, what are your like go-to?
Non-shamelessly, I still, as old as I am, I still don't see Slipknot as being something I should be ashamed of having to listen to.
No. It was such
they're still
they're huge. Everyone knows who they are, absolutely, and I'm sure.
Right.
I think they're booking a tour currently, and it's already selling out like insane rates. So,
right, and then there's just other I don't know, rock in itself. I can go to a rock concert with people that I've never met and I've never heard their music before, and I'm seldom disappointed just walking into any indie rock concert because it's always people trying their hardest.
Yeah.
And that's what I appreciate about the genre, I guess. So.
Do you still go to a lot of rock gigs?
Yeah. Yeah, where I am in Florida now, there's not as many because it's a very diverse crowd. But we have some bars up the street, like 2 blocks from where I live. There's one of those main stretches that's like a tourist, trap in Florida.
Yeah.
And every night there's at least one bar that has just some artist you've never heard of just playing its heart out on the stage.
Okay,
and that's
cool.
always just life affirming.
Yeah. Indie bands like
right.
at the beginning of their journey.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. So have you listened to the new Slipknot track and watched the video?
I have listened to the new track. I was actually, you messaged me about there being a new Slipknot track, and I felt like a bad fan. Because I follow Corey Taylor, I follow Slipknot on Facebook. I'm supposed to get email updates, and I didn't hear anything. And then you messaged me, and I went on Spotify, and I searched, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's here.
Oh my
It's
God.
Been here how long? I never knew about this.
Oh, I let you off because I get up 5 hours earlier than you, so that was the only reason.
Yeah, that's probably what it was, yeah.
What did you think of it?
I think it was great, man. It was I don't know how familiar you are with Slipknot, but they're like if I wrote a thesis project, it would be those guys.
Right.
And it was everything off of their latest album. It was everything off of Iowa. They had the drum beats that they had in subliminal verses. It was this culmination of everything that they've spent their whole careers doing. And in their last big interviews they did when the Gray Chapter came out, they stated, what we learned the most from All Hope Is Gone, that terrible album that all their fans hated, was that you have the rest of your life you have your whole life to make your first album, and you have the rest of your life to make the album after that, and you should never take that for granted.
Yeah.
And I think that they kind of lived up to that with this newest song, because they took everything they'd learned before, everything that they were great at before, and they threw it into this one song. And if the new album is going to be anything like the new single, I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, for sure. I think they encapsulated that actual sentiment as well within the song, which is what I really liked about it. I've always loved their lyrics anyway.
Right, the new does not mean best,
yeah,
exactly. The old does not mean dead.
Exactly, yeah. And then once I'd heard that, I then was like, I'm going to go back and I want to, hear and read what the verses are and stuff to kind of, I love Corey anyway. I think more than the music for me, I like just listening to him talk in interviews, and I like Stone Sour a little bit more than the Slipknot stuff, just because it's a little bit more melodic for me. But
yeah, I'm on that same page. My friends were hardcore Slipknot fans in high school. I got made fun of for it, but yeah, Stone Sour's always been. If you can have a mainstream rock band like that puts out those singles,
yeah,
and still know that you have the power to be Corey Taylor and Slipknot. That's
exactly.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I think also the reason I liked it was because you tend to get a lot of rock bands that will come back after like 5 or maybe even longer years, and they'll try and squeeze into the modern music in some sort of mildly cheesy way, and it just
Oh, you mean like Fall Out Boy?
Yeah, I do mean like that. Yeah, or even I thought it about Incubus in a way, even though they weren't a rock band. I was really disappointed with their recent stuff, and yeah, just numerous others. Whereas I think these guys they came back as exactly what they are, but also they just touched on the state of things now, and like the video was quite poignant as well, as always.
Right.
Yeah, I just thought it was quite a nice like artistic burst. I don't know what the album will be like. I don't know how they'll top it or bring it together, but yeah, it was an exciting moment to kind of see that, because I think just most of the internet is taken up with hip hop releases lately, it seems.
Yeah, and that's I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that too, because I get it. Like, rock music got popular because it was, what your parents told you not to listen to, and I feel like that's kind of where hip hop is falling into now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like I'm about that age where I should probably have kids that are getting up there, and I should be like, you should like rock music because it's what I grew up with, and they're like, screw you, Dad, I'm gonna listen to Takeshi 6ix9ine or whatever. Yeah. I don't know the people.
Yes, yeah, no. But it's actually in the same way I do listen to a lot of interviews with hip hop artists, because there's a certain confidence you get in that genre that you don't really find, in folk music and stuff like that. Which is quite interesting. So what do you think about? What are your thoughts on like the future of rock music then, and like not in terms of it being mainstream, because that's never really been the drive. But
I think it's great. I was actually really hoping that it would already kind of be more mainstream. I feel like every time in America, at least, that there's like a really big Republican regime, that rock music kind of peeks its ugly head out and makes its best music.
Yeah.
Case in point being like System of a Down was on fire during the Bush years. Like they were unstoppable, and I think that it was sort of that sentiment that just the liberals just brought it forth, and that's great. But I haven't seen it as much in the last couple years.
No,
but it's still there, and what I do hear is incredible. Like what I hear, I don't know. I don't think it's ever going to be gone. I just think it's hard to market, because when you marketed rock, you marketed entire albums.
Yeah.
And today's society and Spotify and everything, they market singles.
When you go to the local rock shows near you, are they packed? Are they still popular? Are people turning up to that kind of thing?
Yeah, actually, the last rock show I went to, I went to Quad City DJs.
Right,
it's not a rock show, but they did that Space Jam song.
Oh, okay.
And I went to a club that it was like $30 cover a person to get in there, and we went and we watched them play the Space Jam theme, because that's the only thing they're known for. And I didn't feel like there was any people at all in the bar. There was like maybe 20 people up against the velvet ropes, like singing along to the song with them. But you'll go to any one of the Irish bars around here that's just a local dive any night, and the bar will be packed with people that are willing to bring a guitar to play a song for once.
Nice, yeah, that's really cool.
I think, right. So it may not have the commercial success, but there's still people.
But there's still a scene there, yeah, for sure.
Right, yeah.
Hopefully it will start to grow again. I don't know so much about in America, but there's a couple of punk rock bands that have been around for probably years, I think. But this past year or two have suddenly been on on TV shows, and they've suddenly started getting bigger gigs. And I don't know whether it's connected to politics, but I feel like it definitely. No, I feel like it is probably. And that's quite interesting to watch. And punk rock, again, is one of those things where it's fascinating to me, and I would love to go to a show. I don't necessarily put the music on in my free time, but it's that kind of, do you know what I mean?
The energy at the show itself is worth going to.
Yeah,
right?
And it feels like a little bit of a movement at the minute, because there's definitely at least 5 or 6 bands that I could name that have just suddenly this year have been selling out and playing all over the place, which is, I think that's quite exciting.
Yeah, it's an incredible. I don't know. It's hard to say, but I don't know. It's wonderful to see. It's hard to talk about, but it's it's still there. It's just you can't see it when you look at it from the numbers.
Yeah. Do you think
Sort of
the rise of rap is anything to do with the fact that you can just make it by yourself in your bedroom now? That it's easy?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, because I know in the liner notes, because I still dissect when I buy an album, I actually go through, if it's still a CD, and I'll go through the liner notes and everything.
Yeah.
Korn released their Path of Totality album, which was like their big dubstep album a few years ago,
Yeah.
and I really liked it because I like that every other album Korn will do something new. They'll go back to rock and then they'll do something new. And I liked Path of Totality, but reading the liner notes, there wasn't, every rock band that records like their solid rock album, they always go to these studios where it's like, this is the studio where the Beatles first did LSD and we recorded our first singles here, and that's like, there's always some story behind it.
Yeah.
And when you look in Path of Totality, Korn recorded that entire album while on tour in penthouse suites across the world. Like they were at the Hilton in Tokyo and the Sheraton in New York or whatever, and that was their whole album was just made on a laptop in a hotel room somewhere because they could.
So they didn't have live drums or anything like that. Was it all electronic?
No, it was all electronic everything.
Right.
So they'd plug their bass and everything in, but then they'd have Skrillex hop on there and be like, I can do this on a Mac,
Yeah.
and they didn't have to actually be in a studio doing anything. So
How did the sound compare then for you?
the sound, the sound was still great. They had obviously the best people working on their computer sound at the time.
Yeah.
So it comes out great because the people that knew what they were doing knew what they were doing. But you can do the same thing with. I feel like rap has taken hold more because anyone can do it, but anyone can do it because there's so many samples and everything. I feel like if there were just a couple tutorials released that showed people how they could make a solid rock album on a Mac in the middle of a living room, then it would also take off.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because it's easier, but obviously then, there are so many skills involved in it if you want something that's actually valuable and, artistically.
Right. And I think that's where it is, like, because rock can be made as easily as rap can, but there's a certain pride and integrity that every rock star feels in their inside of them and their bands, and they're like, I'm not gonna just sit here and play a MIDI guitar into a computer and make it sound like it's coming out of an amp. I have to play it out of an actual amp. And I think that at some point it's great to respect the integrity, but that's also a hindrance when it comes to, if you want to commercially release your music, you got to be putting out this many singles a week, sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely good if whatever's the most convenient, if you can get more done, that's what this world is about now. It's, what's the quickest way I can do this and get to this place?
Yeah.
And learning guitar, I guess, it takes 10,000 hours, they say. So it's not quite as easy as just finding a sample online and looping that and then singing over it.
Right. And I have to imagine lyrics are, and that's the thing, because rap, there are some, I mean, you listen to like Childish Gambino obviously is up there, and Hobson, and you have all these incredibly lyrically talented people that are, they also almost came, well, Childish Gambino didn't come from nothing. He already had won a couple of awards for writing before he did it, but Hobson got famous almost entirely online, and his music is incredible. His raps are second to none. But it's taken him 7 years of doing solid work and posting YouTube videos to get where he is. And then you have these sensations that just throw something together on a computer, put it out there, and somehow it's like fire. It just catches. It goes viral like it's nothing.
Yeah, it's bizarre, but are they going to, there's the question as to whether they're going to last, because in the past, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I don't think so. I don't know what the economic return on being viral is. Because to me, the obstacle has always been money. I grew up poor. Everyone that I've worked with and been in a band with has always been, of a lower income bracket. And the whole idea is, if we can just sell one album that's enough to, that sells enough to be able to fund the rest of our albums, we can just take work off and just write music for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
And I don't know if that's the same, right? And I don't know if that's the same mentality behind these people that have these viral sensations. Like, are they just writing this viral sensation so that they can make the money that they want to make, sleep with who they want to sleep with, and peace out and just be good for the rest of their lives? Or are they actually trying to build something? And if so, are they going to do it appropriately? Are they going to, write a viral hit, realize that I can do better, and then take the money that they made and make something better and improve themselves?
Yeah, well, you'd hope it would be the latter, but
Right.
You know, there tends to be a limit to how many years you can kind of just go with the party lifestyle and not really care about what you're creating or planning for anything in the future.
Right.
But then you look at someone like Hobson and you look at his first year or 2 years and there wasn't really anyone listening, and still he was,
right.
you know, every gig he did, he was putting absolutely everything into it, and every track he released, he was putting absolutely everything into it, and that there'll always be value in that, and you can always go back and look at that, so he's not going to lose his credibility. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. There are a lot of, I mean, I do love hip hop, to be honest. I love listening to it, but there's just a lot of crap, unfortunately. I mean, not crap, it's not fair to call it crap, but it's just something that sounds meaningless, that they've, you know, put no effort into, or they've mimicked off somebody else.
Right.
Rather than creating something original, I guess. Anyway,
it's
veered off topic.
It's sort of like the app development game for iPhones and Androids. It's, you know, Uber's really good, so we're going to find somebody to pay to make Lyft, and then we're going to make millions of dollars off Lyft, even though it's the same thing. It just has a better corporate backer. Yeah. Sort of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Same with Just Eat and Hungry House. I don't know if you have those in America. You know, you can order takeout online. Are you a coder as well? Can you make apps and that kind of thing?
To a certain extent. I've been working in Java and a little bit in C#, and it's just another whole language.
Yeah.
I understand the format of it. My problem is like knowing the things that you're supposed to call into it. 'Cause like when you open up like a new set of development tools and everything, you have to like input whatever this certain value is, and I don't know what the values are.
Yeah.
I don't know what, you know. I always have to go back to like Stack Overflow and just read through hours and hours and hours of, But yeah, I mean, XML wise, I'm fine. It's just that base Java, which is just the most important thing that I have a hard time with.
Yeah, there's so much to it, isn't there? It's not something, but my partner does that for a living. He makes software, and he's still just now going back and doing like a maths course just to help with some of those like in-depth formulas, you know, that come up.
Right.
Just to help get a little bit more of an edge, I guess. Okay, so in terms of visuals then, if we try and bring it back to independent bands and stuff, what advice would you be able to give that regarding like the visual side of things? So album covers, song releases, even videos, anything in terms of you know, making them or collaborating, that kind of thing.
I mean, if you have the money, obviously, get the best camera that you can. I know a lot of people do, and I've done it before too. I mean, if you have a good enough iPhone, and the certain apps to edit it on, and that's what you want to do, go for it. Sometimes shooting something on an iPhone can be a publicity stunt in itself.
Yeah.
You know, if you file the right press release, like, oh, this band released all of their album artwork with the same iPhone that the lead singer uses. Yeah. But personally, if you can find a camera that shoots in RAW, that's just a dream to work with. If you're new to photography and stuff like that, when you shoot camera photos off of like an iPhone, it saves it in a JPEG format, which is digitally, it's like a matrix. Every pixel has certain chroma and luma values and everything. And when you shoot a JPEG, those are kind of set.
Yeah.
But when you shoot on RAW, they're flexible. When you shoot with a camera, like if I'm going to take a picture of my dog, then the camera is going to be, oh, this part of the dog is white, this part of the dog is white, this part of her eye is blue, this part of her eye is blue. But when you shoot in RAW, then it has a whole matrix of information inside of every pixel that says, well, if this part of her fur is white, then her eye is blue. And, you know, if you change the light to make her skin appear green, then it's going to make her eye appear purple.
Right.
Or whatever. And it helps to manipulate different parts of data. You can literally just manipulate every single part of every pixel instead of just putting a mask over top of what you're doing already. So.
Right, okay. Is that when you're taking the picture, or are you talking about afterwards, like when you're editing it?
Yeah, afterwards when you're editing.
Right.
When you take the picture and you're just taking a JPEG, just saving it in the lowest format, it's quicker to upload and everything like that, but it doesn't have any of the information in the picture. It's just like working with sound, with the difference between waves and MP3s. Like there's just so much more.
Yeah.
In depth technologically. that you can play with.
So what is the best camera then, in your opinion?
Well, the old adage is Canon for hardware and Nikon for lenses. So I shoot on a Canon and I have some lens adapters.
Right. Okay. Oh, okay. We've got a Canon.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Canon camera, Nikon lenses. And actually, a lot of what I use to save money is I have some lens adapters that use some old, like Konica Minolta lenses and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And that.
Yeah, I definitely prefer Canon.
Okay. And so, what about like artwork design then? Do you have a creative perspective in terms of that, I guess, the image of it, or is it more like the tech side of it that you would advise on?
On which part of what? I'm sorry?
Like, were you ever into like painting and drawing and that design and in that kind of respect, away from the computer?
Yeah. I had my art teacher in high school. Actually, I didn't even do a lot of design work in college until I went to Full Sail. But in high school, I had an amazing art teacher that was also like our drama teacher and everything. We were really small school, so she had to wear a lot of hats. But she taught art in such an interesting way, because she just it was art, so it was kind of a pass or fail class. But she didn't pass and fail people based on whether or not they tried necessarily. It was just their intent. Like she passed my friend Jason. He took her art class and she was like, listen, you know nothing about painting, and I can't teach you anything about. Sorry. But I can teach you, anything you need to know creatively otherwise. And I know that you're a gifted musician. I know that you look at the world in different ways. So show up every day, do the work, and I'll give you the grade. But she always had these weird things, like we would do these facial sketches before we would paint them. And we had to do them in pencil. We were never allowed to do pen. But when we did pencil, you weren't allowed to do that weird thing where you kind of scrape halfway down the page real lightly. Like, you had to commit to your lines. And she said that's why we do everything in pencil, because you have to commit to your line but know that you can erase it if you ever had to. And that was sort of one of those things that, like, just at its core is just such an artistic, like, statement to me. Yeah. Like, always pick something that gives you an out early on in the game. And then she would do sculpture. We did sculpture classes and everything, and I made this little frog, and I kind of put his little tiny legs in front. And she said, when you're doing art, it's important to look at the world and look at how things actually are, because what you have here is a really good frog. You've done well on his face, his tongue's hanging out, it's really funny, everything, but his legs are going into the front, and if you look at this frog, his legs are actually coming out of the back of him, and you have to give him these giant thighs. And she, like, sort of Googled pictures of thighs and, like, kind of worked with me through it and just showed me this whole three-dimensional concept of how art is just looking at things long enough to understand how to be able to recreate them. And I've kind of carried that the whole time.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Because I'm terrible at drawing. It's just one of those things I've tried lots of new things, but I haven't got the patience. And I know I could, obviously develop that skill, but I haven't got the patience. It reminded me, actually, I don't know if you've seen, there's been an article going around about people trying to draw from memory famous logos, like the Starbucks logo and stuff. Yeah. And it's just terrible. Yeah. I mean, it's almost right, but you realize,
but there's always something kind of off about it. And
yeah, exactly. You're not really paying attention when you look at these things.
Yeah. And that's where the vector-based programs like Inkscape come in, because you can. I've done a lot more drawing and stuff in the recent years, and it's really nice to be able to draw a really crappy line and just be able to delete it out and start over. Yeah. So that's always easy. But yeah, I live in New Smyrna Beach. I don't know if you're familiar with Bob Ross. He's what? He's like a painter. He's the painter that's always like happy trees, happy trees.
Yeah, he's been mentioned in like South Park and things. He
retired here where I'm living now. There's a Bob Ross studio, and for like $50 a day, you can go down and learn how to paint at the Bob Ross studio from like people that he taught, who then taught their predecessors or whatever. So,
that's nice.
Yeah, so I've been doing a lot more of it recently, but yeah.
Just because you just find it therapeutic.
Yeah, pretty much. It's something to do. I used to do it with my daughter. We'd have canvas days where just to kind of get her. She was like 4 years old, and I just kind of wanted to get her familiar with things because I've found that if I had become more familiar with more things at a young age, I'd probably be better at the things I'm doing now. So
Yeah.
so you got to be okay with failing in front of your kids to get them to be better adults.
Yeah, definitely. How old is your daughter now?
She just turned 6 in October.
Okay.
So yeah.
So, in terms of sort of, I take it back to the asking about album artwork, then I guess, have you ever been influenced by the artwork for an album, or is it just not that important?
It's always important.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like Disturbed's Believe album it's such an iconic. It's got like all the mixture of religious symbols in front of it, sort of thing, on like a red leather background, sort of thing, and it's a really simple thing, but there's that, and then Disturbed also had Todd McFarlane did their 10,000 Fists cover, and he did Spawn, and he did the Batman series in the 90s and everything, and it was it's a beautiful cover, and it's just, I don't know, I feel like the album art, not only just having album art helps, but what a band is willing to pay or partner with to make their album art.
You think that shows a nice
quality? Right. Yeah. It's like, if you find, you get one of these bands that's, making millions of dollars a week selling out shows, and they find some small artist to do like Korn's done it before too. They'll have like their fans submit art, and they'll release 15 different album covers that are just album art made by their fans, and that's the sort of thing that, like, it has nothing to do with your music necessarily, but it's a part of your culture that you're creating with your music.
Yeah, it's a really nice gesture.
Yeah, and it's important in that sort of way, I feel like.
So you'd always recommend actually sourcing some decent artwork rather than just whacking a picture of your band on the album cover?
Yeah. The pictures of the band, I mean, if you're fortunate enough to have liners in your CDs, if that's a thing that you do, or a bio page on your Spotify, you always do need a picture of your band, hopefully a clearly labeled one, because nobody can come to your show and root for you if they don't know your name or what they're looking at. But
no, but that's social media does it now, doesn't it? You can make sure everyone knows what they're
and that's what's brilliant about it. But I feel like there should still be just a picture for people to rally behind. With Blink 182, it was the smiley face with the X's. Even though like their older fans will all say it's the rabbit, but in their later albums, that smiley face that's spray painted with the X's, and they add one new arrow to the smiley face every time there's a new album that comes out, sort of thing. And that's something their fans can relate to, look forward to, something you can get a tattoo of if you really appreciate the band.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess tying in with that then, how important is it to have a decent logo that you're going to stick with throughout your career?
It's pretty important. I'm trying to think of bands. It's every band that I've ever really liked has had one, and I feel like it's always been sort of a rallying point. I mean, Disturbed had that smiley face guy thing on their first album that was just a scribble that one of their band members wrote down, and now he's like the guy that does all the things in their music videos. What's his name?
It's like a symbol of like. Sorry, go on.
Oh no, I'm sorry. It was just the skeleton for the Iron Maiden. Eddie, is that his name? I think. Yeah, there's I think his name's Eddie, and there was a kid in our high school that always had his shirts on, and he knew everything about him and who he was, and then Slipknot always had that sort of tribal S logo. Blink had the smiley face, and then it's just every band that stood the test of time that I can think of has always had that rallying sort of symbol,
like a flag.
Yeah, like something that a teenager can scribble on their binder at school easily, and that's another thing that I think that if you're going to have one of those logos, it should be something simple enough to be easily replicable by your fans, because if you want to cater to people that can't always afford to buy your merchandise, but you still want them to be a fan, you want them to be able to like recreate your icon, that's the guaranteed 100% best way to get fans that'll love you, is to just be easily relatable and have something that's easily identifiable, and then something that even that some kid can draw in a new Sharpie on his brand new shoes so his parents can yell at him, but he doesn't care because he's going to school, and that's cool to him.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I guess, yeah, it goes back to when you were saying earlier, whenever you go to a rock show, you always feel completely welcomed and, like it's something special going on. So it adds to like the togetherness. If you see this merch somewhere, it's like someone's putting up their flag and you know there's someone that's also a fan of that.
Right.
It kind of brings everyone together. I don't think, bands don't really do that much. Or maybe I've just not noticed. But I don't see there aren't too many modern logos that come to mind. There's a couple of taglines that certain bands have. I don't know if you know Machine Gun Kelly, the rapper, he has the whole lace-up thing.
Yeah.
I can't think of too many others.
Yeah, it hasn't. I know here we've got, they've got like the ICPs and the stuff like that, the bands that just won't die even though everyone wants them dead there.
Is that still a thing in St. Cloud?
It is, yeah. It's weird. They actually had a bit of a resurgence because they're like a weirdly Juggalos. That's what their fans are. They're Juggalos.
Oh, that's right.
Juggalos have a weirdly like anti-Trump sort of thing. So they're having like political rallies now where they do ICP merch and everything. So it's weird, but it's anything to rally people around. And I think Fall Out Boy's kind of come around to that. Their last 2 or 3 albums, they've had that same weird crown logo with the FOB in it. I think they're starting to realize that they need to get people on board.
They just had Machine Gun Kelly support them, so maybe his logo.
Yeah, my friends were actually at that concert in Battle Creek where Machine Gun Kelly dropped his diss track against Eminem.
Really? And that was the one where everyone said that it was booed.
Yeah, and he was. It's because that's Battle Creek. Everyone was there to see Fall Out Boy, and it's Battle Creek. I mean, Michigan. We went through a lot of stuff, and I was never even a huge rap fan, and Eminem is still like hands down like would fight for that guy. Just like I don't know why, it's weird, it's dumb, but like he was sort of the voice of our resurgence as a state, like we went from having nothing and the Eminem show came out and we were all like cool with it, and then like 8 Mile came out and we're like, yeah, I get that, working at a factory 20 hours a day trying to make ends meet, and then he got big and Michigan came back and it was just like he was still there fighting, he never moved away or anything, he's just there every day fighting the fight, and Michigan respects that. So
so that's right. Okay, I didn't understand that it was where it was and the logistics of it.
Yeah, that was. I think that's what the funniest thing was, because Machine Gun Kelly was trying to say, look at all these people that are supporting me in your backyard because we're in Grand Rapids. Like it's like 2 hours from Detroit, but still in Michigan. But what had happened was they'd gotten everyone together for a group photo. Nobody knew that it was Machine Gun Kelly that was even on stage. They all, posed and were like, oh, yeah, we're at a Fall Out Boy concert. This is awesome. And then he jumped out there right when they took the photo and was like, yeah, they're doing that for me. But they weren't.
Oh, that's so fake. That's awful. I'm disappointed. I'm not surprised, but I'm disappointed.
Right.
I think it was when I was watching the whole, like, him dropping the diss track and stuff, I was, like, fascinated, but it's, like, slowing down to watch a car crash. It's like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
Obviously, Eminem is just amazing.
Yeah.
But anyway, we've veered off. No, I'm glad you've solved that one for me. I was wondering what the truth was. Awesome. So are you still enjoying writing music reviews? Is it still something?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah? How do you approach it when you listen to something that's not a genre that you like?
Fairly as possible. No, it's there's not a genre that I don't like. I don't know, it's weird. I love all of music, and I love. It's weird. It's never a genre thing for me. It's an inspiration thing. Like if there's a review that I read that it sounds like somebody's not trying to tell their story, it makes me sad, and it makes it hard to review their stuff. Yeah. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why you're a great reviewer. I think you always surprise me when I think that it's something that you're not going to like, and then you
it's
this amazing spin on it.
And that's the thing. Cause I feel like the whole point of music is just somebody. I don't think people make music to make music. I think they make music because there's something inside them that they have to share with somebody, and it's the only way they know how. And when that's a truth, I appreciate that. But then there's a couple people that just, they look at music and they're like, this would be a good way to get chicks and make money, and I'm going to do what I can do. And then they put out this pile of an album that's nothing. And that's, it's hard to respect. And I mean, you still, reviewed on its merits, obviously, but I don't care if your sound quality is down, if your recording quality is down, if you don't know all of the words that you're supposed to be knowing, but you're trying. It's, if you have a message and you have a feeling and you want to get it out there, and this is the best you know how, and you've done it, then congratulations, man. Like that's the first step.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. And it's like, it's when you've captured some sort of moment, even if the sound quality is terrible, it's just, you can witness this kind of person pouring everything into it, whatever the genre is.
Right.
And you listen to it slightly different. Yeah, I totally agree. And you are a really great writer. It's always
Thank you.
Quite inspiring reading your stuff. It'd be interesting for us both to review the same thing, actually, and then
right.
probably be like, "Oh, I should have
Actually,
said that."
I did that earlier today. I went online and I read. I think her name's Alyssa. She also reviewed a rap track from the same artist that I had just.
That's right.
Yeah, she reviewed Purple Clouds. And I reviewed
Clef.
Showtime. Yeah, from Clef Mikado.
Yeah.
And I listened to the song, and I listened to her. I read her review of it, and I was like, wow, it's really interesting. Like, it's really interesting to have listened to an artist and reviewed them, and then to see someone else's take on the same exact artist.
It
with a
is,
different
isn't
song.
it?
Yeah.
That's it. I think I like that, and I like just hearing other people's perspectives, and that's why I try and write, I guess, and get people on board that are happy to write that way, because it does inspire you to listen to it slightly differently.
Right.
Even if something's slightly out of tune or something's a bit too loud within the mix, that's just obviously not where their skills lie. So you don't need to dwell on that, but you try and listen past that and be like, wait, this is obviously where the passion is. This was the sentiment of it. This is why they did this.
Right. And
then it sounds completely different, and suddenly it sounds amazing.
Yeah. And there's so many artists that are just putting their hearts on the line, man. And it's nice to have somebody that's just like, hey, shut up and listen to this for what it is.
Yeah.
Exactly. I get it. They don't have $10 million to sit down in the studio every day and produce this, but they made this, and it's awesome, and you need to hear it and just do it. Just listen to this song for what it is.
That's it.
And
yeah. Just trying to make it as easy as possible. Now we've got like a playable thing on Instagram and stuff, so it's really not any time out of your day just to have a quick quick skim through some of these songs.
Right. And you've got the playlists
incredible.
And everything going on too, and that's...
Yeah, we've just started doing the rock playlist is amazing. I literally listen to it pretty much at least once a day.
Yeah.
It plays it on shuffle, so it's always slightly different. But yeah, the music people are making is just fantastic, and they're just making it because they love to make it, which I think makes it a little bit more special.
Right, it does.
Awesome. Is there anything you wanted to talk about or say?
I can't think of it. It's been an incredible experience. Just with some of the stuff you've sent me, like I didn't realize the cultural differences in a lot of places that are like subtle. Like you get the big ones because there's always like BuzzFeed articles that are like, here's what everyone from England hates about America, and it's like, oh, I didn't realize that free refills on soda was like a thing, but that's cool to know. But like the flashback from Tapes. That song speaks to like an entire generation and an entire nostalgia factor that I never experienced myself. Like I relate to, they mentioned like playing N64 and smoking with your friends, and I get that entirely. But then like Brumtown, I had no idea I had to Google that. I didn't.
Oh yeah,
that was like that's I didn't know, and I looked at it, I was like, wow, there's like a whole scene here that this track is speaking to, and it's actually like a gospel fourth scene, and that makes the track, that made me respect the track like that much more, because it was more than just a song. It was like, this is me, I grew up here, this is my entire way of life, and here I'm writing a song about it, and you have to give credit to that when you review it, because
absolutely. No, I didn't really think of that, because to me that was just quite a nostalgic, very British
right.
Little journey. They've just released something new, actually. They've just emailed this week. I'll have to send it over to you.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Yeah, that's it.
All right, have a wonderful night.